I'm Fakhul Miah. I'm the innovation lead for Elastos, which is a open source Web3 technology stack that has its own native blockchain that is secured by the Bitcoin network. So you get the boast of Bitcoin and Ethereum-based EVM contracts. We also have what we call side chains that allow you to spin up chains such as Solano, EVM, etc., as well as both private and public solutions. And why I say it's a vertical tech stack is we also offer decentralized identity solutions that are both KYC and offers SSI potential, also decentralized storage solutions, carrier network. So pretty much everything you need for a true Web3 technology stack. I am also the CEO of Creda, which has its home within the Elastos ecosystem. Creda is a alternative data, credit data company. So think of Experian, FICO, etc. What we do is we're pretty much disrupting the space by taking traditional and on-chain data to generate credit and credibility scores for individuals that can be used in both the real world and the metaverse. So think of financially excluded individuals, corporate entities that want to enter the metaverse and Web3. But thank you for having me.
Thank you, everyone, for the really wonderful introduction. I think everyone has a better understanding of what you guys do, right? Seeing that you guys are all the experts, right? And I think I'll assume the role of an investigative sort of journalist, right? I actually do have a question, right? So, it actually ties into my introduction. We have a lot of diversity right now in the crypto payment space, in the crypto space actually, right? And all these is actually a feature, not a flaw of that environment that we're in, right? Decentralization, that's the key word, right? So in traditional payments, we see that there are a lot of standards, right? One notable standard being the SWIFT system that where banks are able to, banks are able to communicate with one another, right? Efficiently, right? And that, I think, insofar as traditional payments are concerned, that's something that has worked quite effectively so far. So in the space of crypto, given that, we're still in the really new and the really early adoption phase, right? What are the standards, or what are the things that we can do as collectively as an industry to sort of let's foster this sort of efficient payment system for crypto payments?
I'll jump in if you don't mind. So, interesting topic. Actually, one that's close to my heart. My previous life was in investment banking, so I was at Morgan Stanley leading their margin financing division. And I think, Swift is a great example. It celebrates its 50th birthday in May. Ancient technology, but it works, and it needed to work, and revolutionary at the time. When it comes to Web3 and the different options we have around payment rails, the revolutionary aspect, you can go from settling payments that take multiple days to instantly with the power of the blockchain, and that's phenomenal. I think what's key though is the nirvana is truly decentralized Web3 that facilitates payments globally. But I think there's going to be an interim step, and that's kind of where we are now, is trying to get these Web2 traditional players to adopt Web3 technology, blockchain standards, etc. And Swift's done that. It recently had a use case where it was able to settle certain CBDCs across different countries, and I think that's important. And so for me, I think, yes, Web3 and crypto, whatever you want to call it, it's here to disrupt, but there's a lot of regulation in the industry, and it's going to take time. So our best bet is to work with regulators, the traditional existing institutions, and give them ways to improve their standards. Now, sure, some of those Web2 players are not going to be willing to adopt, and they'll fall behind. Just the same way, the old search engines, early days, they fell. Google came out as a winner. That's probably what will happen here. So I think technical standards is very important, and I think working with regulators is needed. Regulators often a taboo word in this space, but really, if you want true mass adoption, that's where you need to go. And that's, for me, that's where things like decentralized identifiers is key. And at Elastos, that is something that all users get by default. We have our own identity chain You get verifiable credentials. All of that is needed to introduce the required trust so that an everyday consumer can send, payments all around the world. It's here, it's working. You can send transactions instantly, very cheaply. Think of, if you're an expat, maybe you're a cleaner working in a more developed country, but your family's back home. Using the old system, often you'll pay 20-30% in fees. With the power of Web3, it's less than 1% in certain instances. But to begin with, everyone needs to work together. I think technical standards is really important.
Interesting. That's really interesting insight. Does anyone other?
Yeah, I'll jump in here. I mean, like, if you look at Swift, I think it settles US dollars. And I think, like, if you look at one of the biggest applications of blockchain, I don't want to even go Web3, one of the biggest use cases of blockchain that people kind of just sits there, and people, we all probably use it every day. You don't really realize it's actually it's the US dollar stablecoin. Like, that's actually the biggest application of the blockchain right now. I mean, it's $100 billion, right? You got it's $100 billion with tons of flow that goes into it right now. And that's basically a decentralized version or semi-decentralized version of Swift right there. Right, and I think it allows people to access U.S. dollar in a whole new different way vis-a-vis a traditional U.S. dollar banking account. And then it allows for, I would say, merchants, online Web3 merchants now, like all kinds of merchants, basically to access U.S. dollars and move funds around. And I think that exists already, right? And it's on chain at least, and it's open and it's fast and it's cheap, right? And I think like the whole reason I think we're all here, at least in the payment industry at least, to get to the, like, what I call like T plus 0 plus 0. Right now, anytime you get settlement, it's like T plus 3 plus 5% or whatever the heck it is, right? But I think with blockchain, and you're seeing that with stablecoins, right? You can basically get to T plus 0 plus 0. I mean, it's like, and I'd be surprised if like there are not more global merchants looking to sort of how to use that in their day-to-day business. So.
Yeah, so I think we talk about Web3 payment. So we look at Web3 technologies that do things differently from a so-called Web2 system. First, I think is decentralization and based on blockchain technologies. So I think when you use Swift as an example, I mean it's a very successful system as of today because a lot of participants, but they need complicated setup. They're still subject to some vulnerability. I mean there have been some incidents happened. It's still not like the time, the efficiency, and the cost is still a problem. So when we step back to look at what Web3 really brings is a decentralization of public blockchain, is a ledger itself, is DLT, and the industry how to really work together. I think number one is if we have a standard protocol, then how to really integrate every players into this gigantic ledger. So I think this is number one. But of course we see different blockchains. For very reasons. So interoperability, how to make this blockchain works, together. And I think I'll go back to some of the points here. We have to work with regulators, and also industry. I think is do it for the consumers, for users, making sure the experience is seamless, frictionless. So in turns we get more adoption. So ultimately, it's really all these benefits add together to really set Let consumers choose, let the user to choose which system is better from actual values, efficiency, cost, safety, and all those areas. This is how I look at how the industry can work together.
Yeah, I'm just going to chime in a little bit here from what we see from a payments point of view. Yeah, so you can tell that most of our panelists here, they're very experienced in Web 3.0, speaking about blockchain and ledgers, and of course they also know the Swift network. I was also personally from banking for 8 years, so there is a reason why I came over to the Web 3 space, the blockchain space. There's a lot of development in that. I think from a payment point of view, we have to take things a little bit we need to take a step back. Because if you see traditional players out there, without really the knowledge about blockchain and ledgers, etc., they're never gonna take one step into this payment space, this entirely new payment economy. So we have seen, we have to develop some use cases for them. I think it can go as simple as like buying things with cryptocurrency as a new method of payment. It's just another currency. It's actually not that special. It's just another currency that is on some other sort of IT software background, but it can be used as a further currency to everything you have now, your pounds, your euros, your Japanese yen, your G8 currencies. Why not throw in Bitcoin, Ethereum, USDT, USDC? So some of the very popular use cases that have been around is, for example, like we have our client Lamborghini, Richard Mille, Ferrari. These guys have started receiving in cryptocurrency because you see, it's easy for you to buy like a $10, $15 good in fiat currency. But what about a 5 million car? What about in Dubai if you want to buy a 40 million property project? And all you have is renminbi. All you have is like a pounds. You have to go through a series of conversions. You have to swipe your credit card, and then you have to make payment for the credit card. You have to eventually answer to the bank, where did I get my 40 million from? You have to do a lot of things like that. Your money is not that easily moved from place to place in the world. And all along we have been talking about globalization. We have been talking about how the world needs to be more interconnected. And yet our only system that is connecting the world in terms of shifting assets is SWIFT. So it is actually not a competition over here. It's not that like the new Web3 development is going to entirely crush SWIFT and then we are no longer going to use SWIFT anymore. It's actually a complement. So while you have SWIFT that is traditionally very able to accept and also collect, do payouts, etc. in a very safe and secure manner, throw in another thing that also allows for the safer or even like a more efficient way of making all these payments worldwide. You don't have to bring money all over the globe anymore. And let's say if you are, another use case probably I want to share is emerging countries, because we also have a lot of customers from countries such as Indonesia, Egypt, Turkey, Brazil even. And these guys, they are just selling shoes or selling clothes. They are not doing like a Web3 IT business. But imagine selling a pair of shoes for $10 today. And by noontime, your profits, your revenue has already dropped to $6 because of currency movements. So there is this exemplary need for you to convert it into a stable currency and lock in your profits. Otherwise, every day you are open for business, every day you are losing money, and by day 5 you are bust. So for these players, essentially this becomes a livelihood problem. And crypto is addressing this problem for even the smaller retail players in these countries. They might not be able to access USD via a bank because they're underbanked, but they may be able to access a wallet provided by a centralized exchange. And with this wallet, they are able to convert their Turkish lira or Brazilian real into cryptocurrency, move it across borders, pay their suppliers, and eventually keep their livelihood running. So there are a lot of use cases that is on the ground that we are seeing in everyday life. We are very fortunate in Singapore because we don't have to deal with these problems, but these problems are actually worldwide. So building use cases, I think, would be the first step of like extenuating this crypto use case to the rest of the world and the rest of the ecosystem. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for all these perspectives. Really, they really are insightful. But I think one of the things that we also have to talk about is also, from the security angle, right? Right now, we are talking, I mean, you guys are very familiar with the payments side of things, right? But payments usually supported by security. So maybe I'd like to hear a little bit from Jag, right? In this stage right now where we are still in this phase of early adoption, how can we ensure that, different people have different perspectives, given that there's such a multitude of different attitudes towards security? How can we, work together as an industry to foster some sort of unified security ideal that will also facilitate payments?
Yeah, thanks. So security is something that's very close to my heart because I've been in the security industry for 10 years. Okay, the first thing, 4 quick points. The first thing is that we talk about various standards. So there are already security standards in relation to cybersecurity, information security, and data privacy, right? So like for us, we conform to the ISO 27001 standard for cybersecurity, in the midst of attending SOC 2. So that's another standard in relation to information security. And it's also a cryptocurrency specific standard called Cryptocurrency Security Standard, CCSS, that is accredited by C4 Consortium. So those are various standards that companies, they can look towards it, and a set of standards that they can follow, and gain certification and, while at it, gain the consumer's confidence. So that's one. Number 2 is that improving security, it's a continual process, right? It's always a work in progress. And one good way, to, beefing up your security defense is, you can have a bug bounty program. You open up and, you invite white hat hackers, to look at your systems, right? And reward them if they can find any vulnerabilities. Like for us, our team is made up of mostly security engineers and cryptographers, But despite this, we don't rest on our laurels. We have a bug bounty program. And then, to our surprise, we have found that there are still some gaps, all right? And then we know about it, and then we can work towards closing the gaps. So the third thing is that when we talk about security, it's important to have multi-layer security, so that even if you have one layer that's being defeated, by a hacker, all right, or maybe if it's, your system will not be compromised. So, for example, private key compromise is one of the most common attack vector. Right, so we could have, earlier on I talked about multi-party computation. So instead of a single private key, you could have distributed key shards managed by multiple parties. So, if a hacker wants to get hold of a private key, they have to compromise multiple parties, which is not easy. All right, and then maybe you have another layer where you can have the key shard secured under, a secured enclave. So, like for us, we use Intel SGX to provide a hardware isolation layer, to better protect the private key shards, and by extension, the private key. And the third thing, or rather the fourth thing that I'd like to highlight is that, earlier on we talked about having a more frictionless way of managing payments, especially for the consumers. So one thing is that, we could have a network, where payment processors could have a network where you integrate with related counterparties, like for example, for exchanges, with the banks, with merchants, so that consumers, or the users can easily interact with external parties, and when they could do asset transfer in a manner that's safe. You don't have to manage addresses, because right now if you want to send a payment, sometimes you have to work with addresses, but a common issue is that, if you copy and paste the wrong address, then, the other party couldn't get couldn't get the payment, and then you lose your money. All right, so if having an integrated systems can help to reduce friction, and it's also better for the user experience, and of course, better for security.
Cool. What about the rest of our guests? Do you guys have anything to chime in on security as well?
Yeah, I think it's quite important just to take a step back and remind ourselves that, Web3, part of it is here to improve the security. And what do I mean by that? If you think about buying on the internet, I think it peaked at about 5 trillion last year, huge increase due to, COVID. But the problem is, when it comes to Web2, every time you interact with a marketplace, you have to provide a new set of credentials. So on average, each individual has about 150 identities online of themselves. That's quite dangerous, because it means that you're giving up a huge amount of information to multiple different counterparts. And it only takes one for information leakage to occur, for your information to be out there. That's why, you often see hacks, scams, etc. When it comes to Web3, some of the technology that's at the forefront tries to do away with that. If I go back to the concept of DIDs, just as an example, it's all about self-sovereign identities. You hold your data, and you can use certain blockchain technology, such as zero-knowledge proofs or selective disclosure. So when you're now interacting with a marketplace, instead of giving them, let's say your driving license, and they have access to everything, plus all the details, your bank account, etc., you can do away with that. You can just give the essential information that's needed. So that way, you actually improve the security, because you're controlling your own security. But also, it makes it harder, and people will be surprised that a lot of companies on the web, you may think you're just interacting with them to buy a good, but often they're harvesting your data and they're monetizing that without your permission. And again, that's where Web3, is giving identity and data ownership back to the individual. You can control that. So I think, yes, absolutely, it's very important in the early stages that we approach it very carefully, and because it's innovative new payment rails, etc. But just a reminder to everyone, it's here to improve the traditional security. And that's why I'm, super excited by it. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Okay, yeah, I think you've given us a lot to think about. So my last question, right, since we're also running low on time, I do want to chat with you guys a bit more. In the modern world we live in, right, things are very predicated by trends, right? So in some cases, some of the examples I have in mind are like net streaming services, ride sharing apps, right? So once an industry player comes in, they sort of like set the trend for everyone that's going to be coming in the future, right? So I just want to hear your predictions for the future. Like, what do you think will happen in the world of payments, and what sort of trends can we sort of expect in, say, the next 5 years?
We're running out of time, so I'll make it very short. So if we look at Web3 payment, it's really about token. So like our wallet called I'm Token. So token itself is the value, is the money. And on the blockchain, it's programmable money. So from that aspect, I think there's a lot of potentials. For example, we can pay by the ways that we cannot do today. For example, pay by usage to the seconds. So-called streaming payment. So things like that, we can do that with the Web3 payment. So I let others to chime in.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. I think like the really revolutionary things in crypto payments, I don't think it's going to come from the current Web2 players. I don't think it's going to be from like the Googles and the Ubers of the world. That's really going to revolutionize the Web3 payments. If you look at App in the last sort of cycle, I mean, the biggest payment player at that time was PayPal, and then they basically piggybacked off of eBay, right? It's basically a new payment service at that time, servicing a new industry or which is basically e-commerce, right? So I think like what's going to happen here is you're going to have basically, I would say, Web3 commerce, where there's basically, I think it's going to be digital assets, whatever that is, right? Tokens, it could be NFTs, it could be other stuff in the metaverse coming up. I think that's where commerce is going to be, and I think it's going to be the crypto payments companies, it won't even be companies, it'll be crypto payment service providers, I think, or projects that's actually going to service this sort of like new growth. So I think it's like, like new service needs like new offerings, products, fun stuff. You actually need like almost like a new set of players. So I think it's like, that's basically what my mind is from a future perspective.
Yeah, I think if I was to add to that, I really agree. I think, I was just going to add, the winners will come from innovation. And ultimately, I think, if you can find benefits for the seller or the content creator, they will move across because ultimately they care about their bottom line. Think about content creators on YouTube as an example. They get tiny percentage of the ad revenue goes to them. Similarly, if you're selling through eBay or Amazon, you get smaller percentages. I think, with Web3, digital content is going to be really important. So I'll give an example. We have a project called Elastos, which exists on Elastos, and it's very innovative in that it calls itself NFT 2.0. What users can do is you can borrow the power of the blockchain as an example, and you can create digital art using AI technology, like using AI to create digital art, and then you can immediately convert that into NFT. You can store it locally or on a third party, and then you can list it. And you can do all of those steps, within the space of a few minutes. And you get all the proceeds. The marketplace maybe takes 1 or 2%, but that's real innovation. I think those sorts of examples, they'll start off small, but as more and more people move towards them, they will grow. And, at one point in time, eBay, Amazon, no one knew who they were. Originally, Amazon just sold books, and now look at it, it's huge. So yeah, always look for the next big thing, and it's often those that are innovating, not just copying what exists in, say, Web 2.
Yeah, okay. I'll just make it short as well. So from outside, payment is always built by bigger guys and eventually should always benefit everybody who is around. So just like every industry at the very beginning, like the tech industry, even the manufacturing industry, there is always a group of very rich guys building stuff for other people, right? Because they have the resources, they have the manpower, they have the time and effect and knowledge to build all these things. And eventually all these effects should flow downwards into the masses because that is what the world is made of. The world is not made of the top 1%. It's actually made of everybody else who is the 99 percentile. So like our company is FOMO Pay, right? And I think before the entire market crashes, etc., everybody was like really FOMOing, fear of missing out. They want to get into the crypto space for trading for whatever purposes, for crazy profits, for the chance of owning a piece of a digital asset. That is one way to get into an industry, yes. But eventually, I think at the end of every cycle comes the actual usability of what is projected as innovation. So we need to be there for to, of course, embrace innovation, but we also need to be mindful that these things are always created for a purpose. It's not just for trading, it's not for speculation, because we are all up for innovation, but I guess as a licensed player, we should always say that we are not that supportive of speculation at this point. Yeah, innovation is always the thing that we want, and we hope to see more in the ecosystem with you guys who are around, with Ali Cloud, who is actually the data supportive side of this innovation, and of course with all the Web3 players who are here today and outside everywhere else. So let me just cut it short and let Jack see if Jack has anything to add on.
Yeah, I'm very bullish on crypto payments, and I think that one thing that happened in 2022, one very beautiful thing is that, we have seen Ukraine use crypto, to raise funds, protect themselves against, to defend themselves against a foreign aggressor. They use crypto to buy military supplies, medical supplies, petrol, and because, crypto is 24/7, it never sleeps. Right, transaction speed, it's fast and low fees. So I think that's a lot of, I'm very bullish on it. I think there's a lot of potential, but a lot of it, whether it will thrive, whether it make or whether it break, I think it also depends on clarity on regulation. All right, so that is much needed, and we don't just need clear regulation, but regulations that can protect the users, the consumers, and allow innovation to thrive. Thank you.
Wow, I think, I've learned a lot from you guys today, right? And I think conversations like these are really, really important, like coming from all different parts of the crypto economy, right? Where we talk about one topic like payments, right? Which has so many different facets, right? I hope we've all given you an insight of, the diversified world of payments, right, and some of the challenges that is facing the economy right now. I'd like everyone to put your hands together to thank our guests, right, and thank you so much for coming, and we hope to have this conversation again soon.